Hello there, movie fight watchers! Get ready for one of the greatest battles your eyes have ever seen.
Oh, Lord.
Your ears have ever heard. 3 contestants, 7 questions, and a whole lot of sweat and blood is in store. And tears. So strap on your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. It's on. All right. So the first seat we have Sarah. She has been watching movies her whole life. As a youngling, she learned how to study movies for more than just, Matthew McConaughey's face, Heather.
He's nice to look at.
The second seat we have Warren. You guys know him. He is pretty much the champion of this whole thing right now. So hopefully that changes here. Or something happens. I don't know. And then we have his sister, Nikki, who's also been studying under his wing a little bit and hopes to overcome his giant status that he's attained here. Okay, so a quick reminder of the rules. Each person will have an opportunity to explain their main answer, and then they'll have an additional opportunity or moment to fight others' answers. So, and also, take note, if you don't have time to watch this entire thing, don't leave. Why would you leave? But you can go on the bottom there, and you'll be able to see links to different fights and skip around and see whatever. If you're bored, but whatever. If you're bored, we're just doing this for you. But whatever, whatever. Anyway, all right.
I think that's the longest intro.
Yeah, it is.
So far.
I prepared. I feel.
That was good.
All right. So first question, Sarah, you're up.
Yeah.
Best sidekick in film, and does not have to be a superhero movie. No. Sorry.
Okay. So I went a little bit of a different route, Zach, for this one, and I picked one of my favorite movies, and I think best sidekick would be Wilson in the movie Castaway. If you guys know Castaway, released in 2000, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and basically it's about the main character, Chuck Noland, who's played by Tom Hanks, who's just exceptional, and he basically is in a plane crash, and he ends up getting onto a deserted island by himself. He's the only survivor, and I think he ends up staying on the island for 4 years before he is able to get rescued. So the reason this movie has... I don't remember if it actually won Best Picture, but it had many nominations, Best Actor nominations. Just fantastic movie. And the reason I thought that Wilson played a great sidekick, which I know he's not an actual person, but I think that he has so much human characteristic with how Tom Hanks does with this character that I think that it definitely is a good competitor. But basically, Tom Hanks is he's so alone on the island, and he gets angry one day. And he has all these FedEx packages that are coming up on shore, and one of them is a Wilson brand volleyball. And he cuts his hand at one scene, and he ends up throwing the ball out of anger, and the hand print makes it look like a face. And so he ends up making it into a face, and that's Wilson. So that's how it comes to be. But basically, Tom Hanks actually is his only companion the whole time in the movie. So some of the 3 main reasons why I picked it as the best is, number 1, I think it's the most unique sidekick, in that it is not a person but an inanimate object, but truly takes on human characteristics for the main character. Besides Tom Hanks, Wilson is the most recognizable character in the movie. So besides Tom Hanks, of course. So the second reason is I think that it just does the best at displaying the need that people have for human connection with other people than any other sidekick main character interaction in a movie. Because Wilson's not even a person. But the main character needed human connection in order to survive, so he created Wilson. And it's more than just Tom Hanks talking to himself. He actually, it's a person to him. It's a human connection. And he needed somebody who was going to go through this awful experience with him, and that was what Wilson was for him. Without him, I think that he would have died. He wouldn't have made it. He wouldn't have had that. And then the third reason I think is just because Wilson keeps Tom Hanks' character from going insane. I don't think the movie would have been as good without that character. I'm not saying it would have been bad by any means, because Tom Hanks is awesome, but I think it really brought a unique element to it. And who doesn't remember when Wilson gets lost in the ocean and he's like, Wilson, I'm so sorry. He's like crying. He's basically died. And like, I know I cried during that scene. Just very emotional. So that's why.
Okay. All right, Warren.
All right, I went with Samwise Gamgee, aka Sam from Lord of the Rings. First of all, Lord of the Rings, this is a great epic story for good versus evil type story. And Sam in the movie is basically Frodo's helper, so to speak. He's a gardener. His name means half-wit, so it's not anything brave. It's not anything, he's not a warrior or any type of figure like that. But he decides to go with Frodo as when Frodo decides he's going to walk, take the ring up to Mordor to get to Mount Doom to throw it in the lava or whatever, destroy it. And so Sam decides to go with him and to be there with Frodo, to help Frodo on this journey. And the initial moment when he does, Frodo is actually on a boat trying to leave, and Sam's like, no, I'm going with you, I'm going with you. And Frodo doesn't want him to go, he wants to do it by himself. And Sam starts going through the water, chasing after the boat, and Sam can't swim. So he actually starts drowning, and Frodo comes and gets him, and he's like, I'm not going to let you do this alone, basically. And so he goes with him on this journey. And so there's a ton of stuff that happens through all three films. I mean, they're all super long films. It's a huge story, but a couple of highlights, because I won't go through everything. So, Gollum at one point is trying to get the ring from Frodo, and Sam basically beats up Gollum. He's going to, I think, skin him with like his potato peeler or whatever, and Frodo stops him, but Sam's trying to protect him. The spider Shelob, however you want to pronounce it, they get attacked by that in the lair, and Frodo gets poisoned, and Sam ends up stabbing the spider and scaring it away with Frodo's sword. I don't remember, this sword has a name. There's a ton of hard to pronounce names, so I'm not going to try to do all that. And the thing, and Sam actually thinks Frodo is dead. The orcs come and take Frodo, and Sam takes the ring and actually puts it on and hides so the orcs don't get it. And Sam is one of the only 3 characters in the film that's not affected by the evil of the ring. He does it. He can use it. He turns it back over to Frodo. Frodo wants it back because Sam goes and rescues Frodo from the orcs, and Frodo wants the ring back, and he gives it to him back. And he's not affected by the evil of the ring, which is obviously unique to the Lord of the Rings story. Then they get to the Mount Doom. Frodo's too weak. And Sam's like, I'm going to carry you up this thing. We're going to finish this. And they do. Gollum steals the ring, and Frodo ends up knocking Gollum in the lava and destroys the ring. The volcano goes off, and they basically land there thinking this is it. This is over. The eagles come and rescue them, stuff. And then after that, there's a scene. Before I get to that, so Sam, first of all, he's the unlikely he's not the hero in the film. He's the unlikely guy, but his dedication, his love for Frodo, and just his attachment to him, he's basically the one that keeps Frodo going on this journey. And he saves Frodo several times, but he's the one that keeps him going on this journey. He's the one that throughout the whole trilogy provides hope, basically, that we're going to do this and we're going to overcome the evil, good's going to win. He's that kind of thread of hope, because Frodo loses hope several times throughout the trilogy, and Sam's the one there that's encouraging him, keeping him with that hope. And then in the end, like I said, they think they're going to die together. They think this is the end. They get rescued by the eagles, and Frodo wakes up and he's back, like in the Shire or whatever. He's in his bed, and everybody's come in to see him, and they're all excited because he won, basically, and everybody's happy to see him. And you see Sam walk in, kind of after everybody's walked in, and they don't say anything, but the way they film it, it's really cool. They just look at each other, and you can tell, it's one of those moments where you can just tell, Frodo's you're the reason that I was able to do this. Everybody's over there celebrating Frodo. Sam just kind of comes in behind everybody else. But the way they film it, the way they shoot it, it shows Frodo and it shows Sam staring at each other, and you can just tell that what this journey they went through over these 3 films, the bond that it created, and the love that they have for each other. And I mean, it's a very cool scene. So, and it's cool to see Sam, gets a girl at the end and gets married to Rosie, the girl that he always said he was going to get married to. And Frodo actually leaves and puts Sam in charge of the book, the Red Book of Westmarch, which is basically the tales of the journeys for the ring and everything. So.
Okay. All right, Nikki.
Alrighty, after that dissertation.
Yeah.
Hey, you sort of talked a lot too.
She might have meant both of us.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the sidekick I went with was Chewbacca from the Star Wars movies. I mean, to me, when I think of a sidekick, I think of somebody that's always there in the action, somebody that's helping out, does whatever. To me, Chewbacca is a good example because even though he doesn't speak, he's got his unintelligible kind of noises that he makes. You get a lot of emotion. He is a co-pilot of the Millennium Falcon. Him and Han Solo had been together since before Han Solo became a smuggler. Han Solo saved Chewbacca's life, and so after that, Chewbacca dedicated the rest of his life to being Han Solo's bodyguard, his companion, his best friend. He goes on all the crazy missions with him. When Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite, Chewbacca's there to help rescue him. And to me, I think he's one of the best sidekicks because he's also, everybody knows who Chewbacca is. It's Han Solo and Chewbacca. They go together. Even people that don't like the movie know who he is, and they know he's a co-pilot and he's always with Han Solo. And so, to me, he's a good sidekick because he's always there. He's in the thick of the battle. He's there even if the odds are against him, and he saves Han Solo's life along with all the others. And it's just a good example of the best sidekick.
Okay. All right. So fighting round. Sarah.
So I just have to say why mine's better.
Or say why theirs
It's not.
isn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that we all have some good contestants, but I'm still pretty convinced that mine is better. Just, I think, from the pure uniqueness of it and the fact that, again, the thing for me is it shows just how much we need sidekicks in general. Like all these other movies that have sidekicks. What is it about a sidekick? Why do we need them in movies? It's because we need somebody in the thick of it with us. We need our Chewbaccas and we need our Sams. And this movie, I feel like, just really showed that the best because you have a movie about a guy who's completely alone. And what are you going to do with this movie? And how are you going to show him surviving? How are you going to show that he is losing hope, but then he's trying to hold on to hope and all that kind of stuff? And that's what Wilson did for him. And I mean, I know you could argue that it's, Tom Hanks, but I feel like that's just kind of part of it, that it's he needed it so much that he created this persona, person, but it was more to that to him. It wasn't just like a split personality. It was somebody in this crisis with him. And I truly believe that Wilson saved his life as well. I know at one point Tom Hanks was going to, kill himself. We know that during a scene. You don't see it, but he was going to hang himself, and it just didn't work out. And I think that just him being able to talk to Wilson helped him get through those 4 years.
Okay. Warren.
Well, like Sarah said, I think they're all good examples. I think the problem with Wilson is she says that he goes through these things with him, but he's going through because Tom Hanks is physically carrying him. He's got no emotion, so he's not physically going through what Tom Hanks is going through. We're just
Am I allowed to say stuff or no?
We're just seeing stuff. The other thing, yeah, you can chime
I'm sorry,
in a second.
keep going.
The other thing, that movie doesn't work without him talking to somebody because nobody's going to watch a film for an hour and a half of Tom Hanks not talking to anybody and just fishing. So it needed something there just to talk to, or else the film doesn't even work. I don't think that makes it a good sidekick necessarily. I just think for the film to even work, Tom Hanks had to do something, or else nobody's going to want to watch him not talking at all, or he looks more crazy just talking to himself if there's not a volleyball there. So that would be my argument with that. And then some of the things she was saying too about the hope. I mean, what I said, my point earlier, Sam he's the thread of hope through all 3 films of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Without Sam, Frodo would have lost hope long before he ever got rid of the ring. So with Chewbacca, I think there's a lot of similarities between mine and Nikki's, just the kind of the epic story of Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings. I think where the differences lie is Sam is the sidekick of the hero. Han Solo is there, he's part of that ensemble, and Lord of the Rings is an ensemble too, but the center of the story surrounds Frodo, and Frodo trying on this journey to destroy the ring. The center of Star Wars is really Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. Han Solo is there as really kind of a sidekick, and so is Chewbacca. He's got several sidekicks, but I get that Chewbacca is the sidekick of Han Solo, but you could almost say that they were equals. I don't think you could argue Han Solo was Chewbacca's sidekick. I think it's more of a, if you kind of do a Wayne's World comparison, I wouldn't say Garth is Wayne's sidekick. They're kind of on equal terms.
I would say he is.
So,
but completely off topic. Sorry.
So I just think his role in the overall story of Star Wars and Han Solo's, if he's Han Solo's sidekick, was lesser than Sam and Frodo's. And Sam obviously was the one that Frodo would not have completed what he needed to do if Sam wouldn't have been there. So that's
I'm just honestly asking, are we allowed to chime in at all? Or does it just go to Nikki now? I don't want to do it the wrong way. Does it go to Nikki?
Well, it'll go to Nikki, and then you can say.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure
we kind of get out of order after
Okay.
that, but we usually try to give everybody at least an
That sounds
opportunity to say a few things.
Okay. I think, these are all good characters. I think with Wilson, the reason I don't know if I would consider him as a sidekick is because Wilson's the volleyball, but he could have talked to a tree and made that something. So it's not necessarily Wilson himself that you're saying he's a sidekick, but I think that he's not unique because it could have just been anything he found. And so for it to be a sidekick, I'm not articulating this very well.
I understand what you're saying.
To me, I think if it's a sidekick, it's a specific person. But to me, Wilson is a volleyball that he talks to. He could have talked to a tree and he could have called it Shirley or anything. And it would have, to me, that's not a sidekick. That's just a way for him to counteract his loneliness because he's on the island by himself. And so it's not necessarily a specific person. It's just whatever he chooses to talk to make himself not as alone and feel like he's got somebody there with him. For Lord of the Rings, I would say, Frodo is the main character, but I wouldn't say that him and Sam are like the main story because you've got so many concurrent storylines with that. Yeah, Frodo's trying to get the ring, but you've got all these people helping in their own ways and different things where you could argue that it's an ensemble. There are large numbers of other actors in the movie that are helping in other ways. Aragorn is getting everything ready behind the scenes and making sure that they have a safe passage. And Sam, you say Sam represents hope and everything, but I don't, I can understand where you're coming from. I just don't know if, he was just there and he was not letting them give up, and I also want to argue with your point that he wasn't affected by the ring, because I don't agree with that either. Because when he took it from Frodo was like, okay, give it back to me now, and he did not want to let go of that ring. So my argument with that is he's not necessarily completely unaffected by the ring, but it's just a matter of opinion what you look for or what your definition of a sidekick is. And how that plays.
Okay.
So you're gonna
Quick,
minutes?
yeah, quickly.
Okay, quickly. So I think just to they're kind of saying the same thing about my character. So I think that the way that the movie was done and how Tom Hanks and the script and everything was, I think that it was like a character. And yes, you could have been a tree or whatever. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, there was a reason it was the ball. He got angry and he threw it, and then it wasn't just like he's like, I'm going to talk to this ball now. It was he saw something. It reminded him of humanness, and he just had a little bit of hope, and so he created this character. And I just think that it was. I know that when they did the movie, that they actually made lines for Wilson to say back. Obviously, in the movie, he doesn't say them back, but for Tom Hanks, like that's how much of an interaction they had. So Tom Hanks is really talking to a person. So I think if it was just any object, I don't think it would have had the same emotional connection for the viewers as well. I think it needed to be a ball that could be moved around that looked like a face. So
I would just say I think he's talking to himself, projecting his self onto that ball.
But that's part of what I'm saying is that it
Right.
shows the need for human connection
Right.
and how it gets us through those
It
things.
does.
And
I'm
that's
just saying.
what a
I
sidekick
think
does.
basically Wilson was almost Tom Hanks' personality talking to himself. It wasn't even somebody else. And then I'll just say one other thing because I know we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Nikki said that everybody was there to doing things. Aragorn was doing things to set him up. Everybody was there setting up for Frodo to destroy the ring. That was still the central part. Yes, it is an ensemble piece, just like Star Wars is. But Chewbacca and Han Solo, they're all there helping Luke destroy the Empire. They're all there for Luke. Everybody was there for Frodo, but Sam is the one that actually went on the journey with him. So they weren't all just doing their own thing. It was all to help Frodo succeed in destroying the ring.
Okay. Alrighty. So yeah, we're way over on the first question. But
we're all doing. They're
sorry,
doing this, so
yeah,
we'll
I'll make
make
it
it
quicker.
short.
Yeah.
This
I'm
is a
gonna.
big question, though.
Yeah, it is a good question. I have to give it to Sarah though. She convinced me. Cause okay, reason number one, you said uniqueness, and it was to the point to where it was. I feel like, I do kind of agree with the fact that there are a lot of supporting characters in Lord of the Rings, and there are a lot of supporting characters in Star Wars. I think what makes yours the best, though, is that it was something just so unique and different you described how he originated the ball into an idea and everything. So I will give you the point there.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I will take it.
All right. Sorry. All right. Next question. We'll hopefully not take 20 minutes for this next
Sorry.
one. Sorry.
That's why you need to
I know.
make us go
I'm
faster.
I'm trying. Okay, Warren, with Mad Max coming soon to theaters, what is the best Tom Hardy movie? And he doesn't have to be in the main character, but at least a major one.
Okay, I went with Inception, 2010 Inception. He played Eames in that character, and he obviously wasn't the main character in that. He was the forger on the team. So he was a con artist, a con man, a gambler. So the reason I picked this movie, I think just overall, it's an awesome movie. It's very unique, very creative. It's a good thriller. It's visually stunning. For film's sake, it's a great film. This is also the film that kind of launched his career, Tom Hardy's career, and there's a lot of films that do that, but he was in, I think I counted up 22 other films before Inception, and one of them was Black Hawk Down. He was the villain in Star Trek Nemesis. He was in Bronson a couple of years before, which got some critical acclaim. So it wasn't like he's been in made-for-TV movies up until Inception. He's been in movies people had heard of. But Inception is the one that launched his career. He got a BAFTA award, the Rising Star Award for that film. That's the British Academy of Film and Television. In case you're wondering what that other was.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's, he had a lot to do because being a supporting character, you got to make your character stand out. And it's not just from the writing on the screen, but your performance as well. And he did in a movie that had a lot of good actors in it. Leonardo DiCaprio, Michael Caine, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marianne Cotillard, or however you pronounce her name. And I don't think he probably wouldn't have been Bane in The Dark Knight Rises if he wouldn't have been in Inception with Christopher Nolan first. So I just there's a lot of opportunities he got from his role in Inception, and I think also just looking at the film Inception, it's definitely one of the best films, most creative films out there as well. So.
Okay. For my best Tom Hardy movie, I went with Bronson. He did that 2008. It is a movie based on a real life criminal who's in prison in Britain. He's considered the most violent criminal. He's been in jail for 34 years, and 30 of it was in solitary confinement. So what Tom Hardy did was he played the main character, and I mean, he had to bulk up. He had to gain like 72 pounds just to pull off his character. And the reason I chose this, because this movie, he won an award for Best Actor for that movie, and that is what gained him more notice and attention from the American movies. After this, he got a lot of smaller parts, which is what in turn made him able to do Inception, because this is what made him known in Hollywood as one of the top actors to watch upcoming. Because in 2009, he was on Variety. He was one of the top 10 upcoming actors to watch. And because of this performance in this movie, and because of that, a lot more American roles were open to him, where he was able to get a part in Inception or Dark Knight Rises or anything else. But this was one of his first movies where it showed just how much range he had, his dedication to becoming the part. He met with the actual prisoner and talked with him a couple of times to just get the character, and he was stunned critics and everything alike just by the raw energy that he put into the movie. So I think that's his best movie, because it was also so unexpected, because he'd been doing a lot of smaller parts where it wasn't anything, and then he came out with this, which was just bulked up. He's a naked team in this. But I mean, it's just a lot is him portraying this, because he's in solitary confinement for 30 years. So when they're filming it, he's either by himself and he's just giving a monologue, and so it shows his range and versatility as an actor too.
Okay. So.
Okay, well, I went with The Dark Knight Rises, where he played Bane, the main villain in that movie. And I'm not going to spend time going over the movie. I think everybody knows that movie, like what it's about. So basically, I'll go over why I think this was the best Tom Hardy movie. I think that, number one, that the Nolan Batman series is going to stand the test of time as one of the best trilogies in movie history, personally. I think it's done really well, and obviously Dark Knight Rises is part of that, and I think Tom Hardy had a big role in the success of that movie. One of my second reason, and one of my biggest ones for me personally, is that Tom had to play a major villain in a popular comic book, obviously, so that's a big thing, but he had to do it on the heels of Heath Ledger's performance, and I think everybody will agree that Heath Ledger's performance as a villain was just amazing, and obviously it was even more, harder to do that after that, because he actually passed away, before the movie came out, and just Heath Ledger's like an icon in that, and so I think that's really hard to do, to come after that, and it's not the same, he didn't play a Joker, it's not the same villain, but he had to be somewhat really, it had to be really good in order to make that next movie good, I think, and I think that's what he did. He created, this character that is just pure evil. He's huge. He also bulked up for this, like Nikki mentioned in hers. His voice, I know it's somewhat it's kind of computer alterated or whatever, but it is his voice, and he actually really thought about how he wanted the voice to sound. And I love his voice in it. Like, I think that makes part of the character, and just how he moves through the movie and how calm he is, yet so destructive. He I think brings about so much fear, and he just really brought that to the screen. And I think that he just is a great villain. And then the last thing, I basically said that he had to rely on a lot more than just like a great storyline or script to portray Bane, and kind of just what I just said, like he had to rely on his own bodybuilding and how he looked, and he had to rely on his voice, and he had to rely on just his fighting skills and what that's portraying about the villain. So that's why I think it's the best.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, a couple things. I mean, we're talking about best film here was the question. So, I think Tom Hardy had good performances in all of these, but I still think Inception's the best film. The Dark Knight trilogy is really good. I think The Dark Knight is better than The Dark Knight Rises. And The Dark Knight Rises, just watching it on its own, doesn't stand up as well as like watching Inception on its own. It's part of a trilogy, which adds to it, but it was also not the best part of the trilogy. There's a lot of just gaps in the story, and that a lot of time jumps that, if you think about it, don't make a whole lot of sense in that. As far as Bane's character in it, his voice, I did like his voice. It is hard to understand sometimes in certain scenes in the movie where it's actually just hard to hear what he's saying. And some of that's probably just how they did the sound in the movie, but it did make it challenging. I also think that the third act of the film really took away a lot of Bane's character in the film, because he's supposed to be this huge, strong, wants to wreak pain on the city, but also very intelligent. And basing Bane off the comics, Bane, one thing about Bane was his intelligence. And then in the third act of Batman Rises, or The Dark Knight Rises, they basically show that he's just a henchman carrying out this girl's plan, Talia's plan, because he loved her. And so it really takes away a lot of that fear you're building up in Bane. You really, by the third act of the film, you just learned he's a glorified henchman for Talia, and this was Talia's plan. And that kind of comes out of nowhere too, for the story. So Bronson, it's definitely not a movie for everybody. I'm assuming it's rated R, not NC-17, but it's a hard R. There is a lot of stuff in that if you just read some of the content in that film. It took, playing that type of character, it does, it takes a good performance, but that film is not something that a lot of people probably haven't even heard of, and it's not something that most people could even sit through and watch, because it's very graphic. There's several nude scenes, some poop scenes, and there's some just pretty rough stuff in that.
Intriguing.
Pretty rough stuff in that film. So I would just say, she said that broke out his career. Well, he got an award for this as a Rising Star Award too. So people also thought Inception started his career too. And I think, like I said at the beginning, I think it's the best movie. I think he didn't have to bulk up for that. He didn't have to change his figure, but he still had to stand his own and stand out in a film with a lot of good characters and a lot of good actors. So.
Okay, I think one of the reasons why I think Bronson is such a good movie for him is because he doesn't have the whole cast like Inception. He's got all these other actors to work off of. It's a giant collaboration of actors, and he's not the main character, but he's got a bunch of other people to work off of. And in the same with Dark Knight Rises, it's a giant, big budget movie. Bronson was a small independent movie, and he had to take on this personality, which is not himself. And I think that he didn't have the not necessarily the crutch, but he didn't have that group of people to make him look better either, because the performance came down to him and how he did it versus those. Some people don't even know who Tom Hardy is in Inception because they're like, which one is that? So it's not like he was so memorable in that where everybody's like, oh, Tom Hardy was the forger. And and Dark Knight Rises is Bane. He had that thing over his mouth. You had a hard time understanding him. And he came across as more of a comic book character, like how the Dark Knight trilogy is a more serious and ominous tone. And then him with his ridiculous voice, and you're like, really? This is what they want to go for with this? And so I think the bigness of the production of it also kind of took away from his actual performance. Whereas Bronson, it's all almost all of it is just him and how he acts and what he can do in a film.
Okay, Sarah.
I think I think the Dark Knight. I hear what they're saying, and I'm also a fan of Inception. I haven't seen Nikki's film, but I still think that just like over time and over history, I think that The Dark Knight Rises is going to be more memorable just long term because it's part of the trilogy. I understand what Warren's saying about it doesn't stand on its own, but I think you have to at least tie it in with the trilogy. And Tom Hardy's a part of that. And I think that even though Inception's really creative and really good movie, I think that I think that for some reason I feel like Inception's more like for those people who really love movies and like love to go for like something different and like, wow, that's just amazing and creative. Whereas this, everybody loves Batman, and everybody I feel like loves the Nolan series of Batman. Like, did such a good job. So I think that's why this movie is going to stand out long term. And I've already said why I think he was good for Bane, so I won't repeat myself. That's it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm kind of getting from yours at least, that you said it was a tough act to follow from Joker.
Yes.
And that's why a villain needed to step up into that role, and one that was going to be confident enough to play that role. And then I'm kind of getting from yours that you're saying that hey, this is a fantastic movie with a lot of like awesome actors in it, for somebody to stand out against actors who had already had a foothold in their acting career and already on top of their acting career, it says a lot because he wasn't really there, I don't feel like. And so and then you're saying that Bronson is a film that's basically just him leading and pushing it through. So if we are going off the question, which I think Warren is right, it is the best film, I would have to give it to Inception because I feel like it's probably the better films out of the other ones, and also I feel like it's one of his better performances since he stepped out and actually was recognized. So I am going to give that one to Warren. But good fight, good miss, that was awesome.
What?
I said congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we all know Ant-Man is going to be terrible. What? It is probably not going to be in the top 10 movies in 2015. But what specific aspect should the movie get right in order to make it at least a little better than average? Nikki?
Okay, what I went with was character development, because I think you can have even a somewhat cheesy movie. As long as you care about them and you're invested in that person, you are going to like it. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody expected that to do good, but because they did such a good job of building up Peter Quill's character, it was a hit. Everybody loved it because they were invested in him and his ragtag crew. And so, I mean, to me, that's what Ant-Man needs to shoot for, is that character development, because the premise of the movie is rather silly. And so you've got to make people care about him to want to watch the movie and to go see it. And if they don't do that, it's just going to be a joke. It's going to be like Green Hornet. It's like, really? This is what you did with all of this? So, I mean, I think they need to make sure that they get his character well, so it's not another horrible flop of a superhero movie.
Gotcha. Okay. Sarah?
I put down that they need to do a really good job of having kind of like Nikki's, but mine's more focused on the villain. I think you need to have a really good villain that the audience can get engaged with. Not meaning that they like them, but just that they get engaged with. Like if you look at, I'm a Batman person. I don't like superhero movies. So Batman with the Joker and Bane, and even in the first Batman of the Nolan series, the Scarecrow, for example, I don't know anything about comic books. I didn't know who Scarecrow was going into the movie. And I don't feel like he was the main part of the movie, like in terms of like, it was all about developing Batman's character. Kind of like what Nikki was saying, character development. But they did a really good job of making like a creepy bad guy that Batman has to go against, and so it makes it, we care about it more. So I want to know, what I would want to know is, why do we even need Ant-Man to begin with? What is he fighting, and why does he need to be the size of an ant to do it? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I think you need to know, who is he fighting, and why do we care?
Okay. Gotcha. Warren.
Okay. I went with a consistent tone for the movie. And that tone specifically being, fun, not taking itself too seriously. The reason I chose this is because I know there's been a lot of problems just behind the scenes getting this film made. I know directors have changed, studios had a lot of input. There's been a lot of things like that. And typically when you have a lot of that going on, when the final movie comes out, it can't ever decide what it's going to be, what kind of movie it's going to be. At some points it's really silly, kind of slapsticky. At some points it's very serious. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a good example of that. It was kind of all over the place, and that was one of its downfalls, is because at some points it's really serious, and at some points it's, doing stupid slapstick humor. And then you've got this weird love story kind of going through it. And it's not consistent throughout the whole movie, and that starts to break a movie down. So I think looking at this, and the reason I chose that, it is Ant-Man. It's he can control ants. He can get down to the size of a bug. I mean, it's silly to begin with, so it doesn't need to go in there taking itself too seriously. And I think being consistent with the tone and just creating a fun thing like that, I think, like Nikki said, you can look at Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a comic book that people hadn't heard of. If somebody tries to tell you the story now of Guardians, it's not like they can give me this good detailed story of what the movie was actually about. You just remember the fun that was had in that movie with the characters, and that's why you enjoyed it, because they're having fun doing it, and it's not taking itself too seriously. And so I think for Ant-Man to be successful for that, I think that's one of the key things, especially based off what we've seen in the trailer so far.
Okay.
Okay, and I think Warren was kind of arguing for my point for character development when he was talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, how it was funny, and you remembered the characters. And it's like, it's not saying they have to be some tragic backstory like Batman. It's like, you just want to know them, connect with them on some level, even if it's something funny. But you want to connect with them because that gives you a reason to invest yourself in the story. And for the villain, I think a lot of times, if it's a good enough story, the villain can be interchangeable. Like in the Avengers, like every Avengers has a different bad guy, and even the Age of Ultron has got a couple of bad guys in it. And it's like, to me, that's not as important because you're just wanting to go see them fight a bad guy. And so you're built up into the main characters, and so the bad guy is just somebody that they're fighting, and it doesn't really matter who. It could be any other character you want it to be. But I think that building up the main characters and making you identify with them and like them and connect with them is the most important thing.
Okay.
I would just have to say, kind of what Nikki just said, that I agree with her that you have to have good character development, but I think to answer the question of being better than average, like, to me, that's what makes a comic book movie better than average, is when you have good character development of also the villain. Because for like the Avengers, you just want them to go see, there's different bad guys. In Batman, there's different bad guys in each one. So, hopefully if Ant-Man's successful, hopefully they'll make another one and you would have a different bad guy. It doesn't mean the bad guy has to go to all the movies. It just means, or through each movie. It just means when you're fighting them, you want it to be a good story. Like with Scarecrow, he was like this crazy man who was inducing or creating fear with this fear-inducing toxin or something. Like, it was pretty creepy, and so it kind of got us engaged. So I want to care why Ant-Man is, what is he doing? I want to know a little bit. It doesn't have to be the whole movie. It doesn't need to be, because it needs to be about Paul Rudd and that. And then my other quick point is that because Paul Rudd is the main guy, he's a pretty good actor. He's known to be funny, which, to Warren's point, if he wants it to be like a funny movie, I think you need to have a pretty strong villain actor as well to go with that. You don't want somebody who's just going to fade off into the background. You want it to be a good battle. So that's what I think.
Well, I think Marvel's going to have a lot of challenges just with this film, like you said, to begin with. But I think speaking on the villain, this is the first film for Ant-Man, so I think there needs to be a good villain, but for Ant-Man to be successful, and especially if they're wanting to continue him on in the MCU, then you're not going to want the villain to overshadow Ant-Man and Ant-Man's story, because Ant-Man is the character we ultimately care about. I think good, you want to have a good villain, but she mentioned Scarecrow. He wasn't the only villain in Batman Begins. Ra's al Ghul was as well, and then we had the Joker in the second one. But just imagine if the first movie was The Dark Knight, and it was just overshadowed by the Joker, really, because the Joker overshadows the second film, and so. I know you're spending a lot of time developing the villain, and this is the first time we've seen Ant-Man on screen, and I think putting the efforts into developing the villain can be costly in the first film. I don't want to have multiple villains, because I've seen that where you have like 3 or 4 villains in the same film, and that goes wrong too. But I think it needs to spend more time on why do we care about Ant-Man, not why do we care about this villain that Ant-Man's going after. So that would be my argument with that. With what Nikki's saying, she's basically saying we need a good origin story is what I'm hearing. A good character development for Ant-Man. We need a good origin story. We need to know why. We need to know some of that, but there's so many films that we've got to spend half the film on the origin story of why, and then we get little bits of action towards the end. We do need to care about Ant-Man. His character that he's playing is not even the original Ant-Man. Michael Douglas's character is the Hank Pym, who's the original Ant-Man. Anyway, so he's not even the original Ant-Man. So my hopes would be that they would spend some time developing the characters, but I don't want it to become this big origin story for Ant-Man. I think this needs to be more. They developed the characters in Guardians pretty good, but it's not like they spend a ton of time on backstory for all the people. And I know Chris Pratt's character is kind of the main, Star-Lord's kind of the main guy, but at the beginning of the film, we already see him in that character, and then we get flashbacks of how he, kind of what brought him up to that character. They didn't spend a lot of time going into this big, long character development. So we need to have all 3 of these things in the film. I'm not saying none of these exist, but I think the overlying thing, the reason I picked the tone, because it's going to set up how they develop the villain, what kind of villain they're going to make it. Are they going to make it a scary Bane, Scarecrow type villain, or are they going to make it more of a comical type villain? And then the character development, we need that too, but the movie needs to be fun, and it needs to get people engaged early on, because a lot of people are skeptical about Ant-Man. And the points I mentioned earlier about how many hands have been in this pot, that can create a mess sometimes with trying to make a film.
I was about to say, just because I say character development doesn't mean I'm saying devote half the movie to building it. You just have to care about it.
Right. I agree you do, but there's ways of going about doing that. So we got to care about the villain, and we got to care about a lot of things in this, which is a film that I think most of us don't care probably that much about. So.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. This is tough. All right. I gotta say I liked Nikki's point though. The argument that won me over with yours was when you said that I would rather go to a movie and care about the main character, and if it's sporadic and all over the place, then at least I kind of want to see, where he or she ends up. So I'm gonna give the point to you.
Congratulations.
I got my cookie point. Second, that's easy.
All right. So we're back to Sarah. So this next one, question 4, is best film that has a villain. Not necessarily like superhero themed, but has a villain as the main character.
Okay. I will try to do this as concise as I can. I apologize in advance. So cut me off if I need to be cut off. I went with the movie Mr. Brooks, starring Kevin Costner. It's released in 2007, directed by Bruce A. Evans. I personally don't recognize the director, but he did an excellent job with this movie. Basically, the main character, his name is Earl Brooks, and he is a highly respected businessman. He starts off with him winning Man of the Year in his community. He's rich, he's powerful, everybody loves him. But the thing that you don't know about him, or the people don't know about him, is that he is addicted to killing. He is a serial killer, and he's known as the thumbprint killer, is the main killings in this movie, but you know just by character development that he has killed pretty much his whole adult life, many different ways. There's so much in this movie. Some reasons why I think it's the best, and I'll talk about the movie, like what it's about, as I give my answers. That's why it's the best. So there's a lot of complex characters, there's a rich storyline, and it gets going really quickly. Like as soon as this gets out, as soon as the movie starts, you basically see that he is a killer, but nobody knows it. And so you know right away. And the reason you know that is because they've actually made a manifestation of Mr. Brooks' kind of internal struggle. So William Hurt is an actor that plays his kind of bad side, if that makes sense. So we see him as the viewer, but nobody else sees him, and Kevin Costner talks to him. And you see this internal struggle. Kevin Costner basically, he seems like he doesn't want to kill. At least that's what he's letting everybody believe, that he struggles. He says, like not the Lord's Prayer, but that serenity prayer type of thing. And he's constantly going to AA meetings trying to, put it aside. He actually stays clean for 2 years, but then his kind of alter ego, which I believe is named Marshall, he starts kind of getting at him again, and he decides he's going to go and kill again. And the complex story, or the rich storyline and kind of a lot of twists and turns, comes with another point of mine. Is the main kind of twist at first is when he's doing his kill towards the beginning of the movie, he's actually witnessed by another person who takes photos of him, played by Dane Cook, who is normally a comedic actor. Nobody would ever think Dane Cook could play like a serious actor, but he has some funny lines in this, but he's pretty serious and really good in this movie. And he basically blackmails Mr. Brooks and says, I know you did this. He shows him the pictures. He's like, I'm not going to go to the police, but I want to go with you, because he basically has this same itch to go kill, but he's never done it before. And so you basically have this kind of intriguing storyline of how is Dane Cook's character, which they call him Mr. Smith, how is he going to manipulate Mr. Brooks? And how is Mr. Brooks going to, basically keep control of all of this? Because that's really what he does. He controls everything, and he makes everything kind of go his way. And then there's several other storylines I don't have time to get into that have more twists and turns that keep you engaged the whole time. The last point that I have is I feel like this is one of the first movies that kind of really shows viewers how a real serial killer might live amongst regular people, so to speak. I mean, this guy is well respected. You actually like him in the movie, or you want to like him, but then you see these other things, so you're struggling. He's a great father, a great husband, all these things. And I think that it came out a year after Dexter started. Everybody knows Dexter, the TV show, which is very much a similar storyline, but that was on Showtime, and it was only on 1 year. I feel like this is really the first breakout movie where it's like a likable serial killer. Like you're kind of trying to root for him a little bit, if that makes sense, even though you know he's doing bad things. So that's kind of my crazy long-winded answer. So.
Okay. All right. Warren?
Okay. I went with Memento. Christopher Nolan's kind of breakout film. So, major spoilers here. If you haven't seen it, I recommend skipping this fight and go and watch the movie, because it will really ruin it kind of for me talking about it, but I need to for my point. So this is a really cool movie. Obviously, we know Christopher Nolan can do great stories. We've seen it in plenty of his other movies. But this movie actually is about a guy named Leonard, and the movie starts at the end and it works its way to the beginning. So how it's shot, basically, we see almost like 15-minute increments of going to the beginning of the film, but it starts at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
and so what it keeps, well, for one thing, it keeps the viewer just enthralled in the movie because you're trying to figure out what's going on. So Leonard's deal is basically he's looking for the guy he said killed his wife. Somebody broke into their house at one point, and or two guys possibly, and attacked his wife. He wakes up in the middle of the night and finds her, and they're like strangling her, and he gets hit in the head, and from that point on, he can't make new memories. He has no short-term memory. So basically, we're going through this movie because he can only remember things for a couple minutes and then he forgets. So as you're seeing these pieces of the film go through, you're basically kind of experiencing it like he does, like he experiences life as he searches for John G., the supposed killer of his. And so the audience, you meet some characters along the way. The audience, only knows that it's told from the viewpoint of Leonard. So we hear narrations of him talking, so we hear his thoughts when he's saying stuff, and he takes Polaroids and writes things on them to remember people and or to remember things. And so we see, as the film is working its way through, we see him meet people and stuff, and the only thing we know about is basically the same thing Leonard knows, or what Leonard is telling his audience about this character. And so we don't know who to trust, just like Leonard doesn't, but we also know Leonard's condition, and we don't know if we can fully trust Leonard. And so as the story, as you continue to watch the movie, you'll find out how people have manipulated him, but then you also start to see how Leonard's kind of manipulating things, where he shows up and at the end of the film in this nice suit and he's driving a Jaguar, but throughout the film you realize, hey, he stole this Jaguar from a drug dealer, but you don't know that until you get to that point. So it starts to reveal things about you. During this same time, intercut through the movie, he's telling a story about a guy named Sammy Jenkins who supposedly had this condition that he investigated before his injury, and he thought this guy was a con man trying to get insurance money basically for this condition. And so he tells this story of this guy that went through this similar condition, and it's like his, I guess, check on, trying to hold himself accountable because he's doing it better than this guy did. And this guy ends up killing his wife, Sammy Jenkins does, he says, through insulin shots because his wife never believed him in this condition, and he overdosed her because she would just go on, it's time for my shot. And then she'd sit down a few minutes later, it's time for my shot. Until she eventually OD'd because she really just couldn't believe that he really had this condition. So he tells that story through. So a lot of stuff's going on, obviously. Rewind to the end, or to the beginning, however you want to say it, of the film. And as pieces start to unravel, basically, we find out that Lenny is actually the one that killed his wife. His wife never died from the attack. She actually survived. He's the one that killed him with the insulin. He's actually Sammy Jenkins, but he tells these lies to himself. We also found out that the guys that did attack them, he killed them a long time ago. And this cop, Teddy, basically, because he was in charge of his investigation, helped him find it. Lenny chooses to black out police reports. He burns photos. And he's basically created this reality, this fake reality that to give himself purpose in life, basically, of looking for this killer. So he does this over and over and over, and he gives himself new clues and new evidence to point to different people as being the killer. So the audience doesn't really trust anybody going through the whole film, and then kind of towards the end, at the end, the reveal is, that mistrust we had in everybody, we also have in Lenny. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been killing people. And then, so Teddy is at the final scene, and how the movie opens up, he shoots Teddy in the head. There rewinds, and then it starts the film. And at the end, we see why he ended up shooting Teddy is because he killed the drug dealer at the end of the film, which is the beginning of the story. I know, it's very confusing. It makes sense if you watch the movie. But he killed the drug dealer, and then Teddy is like, you've done this before, you're not going to remember and all this, and he shows him the picture, and then so he's sitting in his car, and he scratches out, Teddy's photograph, and he says, don't trust his lies, and he writes down Teddy's license plate as like the next clue to find the killer. He basically drives off, and so then it shows why we see Teddy get killed at the end of the film, because he's basically creating this. And so my final thing, because I know I've been long-winded too, he just, at the very end of the film, he muses that seeking his wife's killer has become his purpose in life, and questions how bad it can be to make one's own life purpose. So basically, he's questioning how bad it can be for him to create himself a purpose for life, and clearly, we see that he's created this purpose of just killing anybody with the excuse that he's avenging his wife because he's lying to himself.
Okay. All right.
It's a really good movie. Yeah.
Okay, the movie I went with was The Usual Suspects. This movie is a really good movie. It starts out, there's this one guy, Verbal Kent, has also huge spoilers. If you have not seen it, I am going to ruin the movie for you. So, FYI. But Verbal Kent's in an interrogation room talking to this police detective. There was a big drug deal gone bad, and there were like 11 people dead, and he was the only survivor. So the police detective is questioning him, and this whole he's questioning him because they're trying to figure out Kaiser Sose is the one that was responsible for all these deaths, and so they're trying to figure out who Kaiser Sose is. So they've got Verbal Kent, and they've got him in an interrogation room, and they're questioning him about what's going on. So this entire movie is him answering questions from the police, and it goes to flashbacks, because I believe it was like over a 6-month period. A bunch of criminals got together for a lineup, which was started it all, and they all had some form of debt to Kaiser Soze. Like, they stole from him, they ripped him off, and so he gets them all together and he says, y'all are going to work for me and pay me back. And it's how the group slowly dissolves, and Kaiser Soze is picking them off one by one. And so there was one person that got thrown from the boat that was barely hanging on. He spoke a foreign language. Can't remember which one off the top of my head. But they get a translator of him so they're trying to interview him because he knows what Kaiser Soze looks like. And so this entire time they're talking to Verbal Kent. He's just giving all these random stories about everything and telling about what went on. And so he is scared to death of Kaiser Soze. So this entire time he's building up this affinity you have for this character because he's a shy, stuttering man. He's got a crippled arm, and you just feel sorry for him that he managed to get this huge, horrible bad guy mad at him where he's in his dead, and he says he won't say anything because he's more scared of Kaiser Soze than he is the police. And as you go on and on, finally they get an interpreter in and they do that. Well, Verbal Kent gets permission to leave because he wasn't a suspect, they were just questioning him. So as he walks out the door, they get the picture of what Kaiser Soze looks like, and it's Verbal Kent. So one of the reasons why I think this is such a good character with the villain as the main character is because you spend the entire movie thinking that he's just a victim. He's some petty low-life criminal that just happened to rob the wrong truck. And then you go through and you build sympathy for this, and then at the very end you find out he is actually Kaiser Soze, and he was killing everybody so nobody would be able to identify him, and he just disappears. Like that, he's gone. It's a great line from that movie.
All right, so you guys have to speed round these.
Okay.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my main point is I think mine is better than both because mine, you know off the bat that my guy is bad. There is no question. He is really, really bad, but you also kind of like them the way they're doing this. Whereas both of theirs, you like both of their characters. You have similarities that you like about them, but you don't know that they're the bad guy. You have no idea till the very end. I do have to say I've never seen your movie, but I do know, I've heard of it. It's classic, and I've heard of it where you don't know till the very end. I've seen Warren's movie, and maybe looking back at it a second or third time, you can pick up that he's not the best character, that you should not trust him, but you also feel so sorry for him just because of this condition he has. And it's more like this is a true villain, main character off the bat.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. With Mr. Brooks, it does start off the bat, but you don't know anything about why he does what he does, besides later on it says he's an addiction. He was supposedly killing all of his life, but you just know that through exposition at some point in the movie. And then as well, why he also comes out of retirement, like he just wants to kill somebody. There's no development as far as his character goes with that. Dane Cook, the other character, again, there's nobody. You don't know why he wants to even tag along with Mr. Brooks. I mean, his character, he's goofy, he's silly, he's kind of the comic relief in the movie, even though I know it's a serious movie, but there's none of that in there. So you do know he's the bad guy, but I wouldn't say he's likable. I don't have kids, but his parenting choices I wouldn't say are necessarily great in the movie. He basically goes kill somebody because he knows his daughter did. And so it's, I don't want my daughter to get caught because she might have what I have. So I'll go kill this person instead. So, it's more of a popcorn type movie. I think there's not a lot of complexity to it. Where both of ours, there's a lot more originality to it. Yes, Dexter came on television, but Dexter was based off the show was based off books, which came out before Mr. Brooks. And Dexter was on for more than 1 year as well. I'm just a quick note on that. On Showtime. Usual Suspects. So yes, again, you don't know. You hear the lore of Kaiser Sose throughout the film, but you don't ever really see him. All you're doing is hearing Kevin Spacey tell his story. So you don't ever see Kaiser Sose through the film. That's how you don't know it's him. So you're just hearing tales of Kaiser Sose throughout the film. And then at the end, it's the big reveal is Kevin Spacey was Kaiser Sose. So he's the villain, but he's the villain among bad guys because the whole group of people are all criminals that he's killing off. So he's a villain among villains. And then he's also the villain status that he created is just through actions, through the story that he tells us. So it's not like we even see that we're getting his villain status through himself. So I can explain a story and say all this stuff that happens to you, and you buy it, and you find out it's me that did it, but I'm the one that told you everything I did. I'm the one that's building up myself. That's kind of what he does. Also, I think Kevin Spacey won a supporting actor in that role. So his role wasn't even big enough. An Academy Award for supporting actor, not actor in that. So I would think that too points to the fact that while he was a villain, again, a villain among villains in that, and his role wasn't big enough in the movie to give him an actor nod, it gave him a supporting actor nod. And somebody could probably look that up if they want, because I'm not 100% on that. But so that would be my counterpoint to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I would say for Memento, it was a very good movie. But the first time I watched it, I didn't get all of that the first time I watched it. I was just like, oh, this is really neat the way he filmed it, and it's a good concept. But I think you have to be paying super close attention, and just, if you watch it, you might not pick up on all of the subtext. And to me, it was kind of confusing too, following along with it. So it's easy to miss stuff because I don't remember half the stuff Warren was talking about. I remember some of it, but a lot of it was just, that Memento was that movie where he told it backwards. That's really all you remember about it. Mr. Brooks, I haven't seen it. I didn't want to see it. But to me, yeah, he's a bad guy. But, to me, I think it's a lot creepier to pretend to be a good guy, and then all of a sudden you realize that, hey, they're not quite as good as you thought they were. Or, yeah, and Usual Suspects, he's a criminal and he's killing a bunch of criminals, but that's not the only people he killed, because everybody was scared of Kaiser Sose. He was like the boogeyman for all organized crime. He was the name that people were scared to death of. And
for organized crime, like you said.
But, for all the people that were in the movie, they all knew him outside of just what Verbal Kent said.
Right.
So he can't have just made up all that stuff and scared the crap out of 6 people. But if he was just talking about himself and trying to make himself more important. And, yeah. I was going to say something else, but I completely lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
Just what Nikki said about pretending, one thing, sorry, but basically Mr. Brooks pretends to be a good guy in that as well. That's his whole life, is you think he's a good guy, but he's a villain.
I think the distinction is to the viewer.
Because
we don't. The viewer doesn't know.
Very true. Very true.
Yours is playing inside the movie,
Yes.
which ours can be as well. But to the viewer, it's not obvious from the first scene that he's a killer. The only other thing I would just say, real quick, I know we're going on. What Nikki said about Memento. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances in the film you might not pick up on, but you see him shoot Teddy at the beginning of the movie, clear as day, and at the beginning of the movie, you see why he shoots Teddy and why he starts pursuing him as the next
At the end of the movie, which is the beginning.
Yes, you see why. So the main points that show you that he's a killer are there. There's a lot of nuances through there that, yes, you might not pick up on everything the first time you watch, but you're so focused in on the movie too, just because of the concept and this idea, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on, that you can pick up on quite a bit of stuff. Okay. All right.
No, I know we just stopped talking, so I'm looking at you now.
Yeah.
All right.
These are good questions.
all night.
There's so much good stuff with these questions. So that's the
Okay.
downfall of good questions.
Okay. So I think the main thing that got me was that we're going for the best film that has a villain as the main character, right? So I think the most interesting film would be Warren's. I would have to say, just because you gave a lot of, if you guys gave more examples on why your villain was specifically more, I guess, different than his. Like, I think the way the film was made was the deciding factor, because I didn't have examples against, he cut off people's toes and fingers. That would creep me out. And
We will make a note of that
Okay.
for next time.
I was about to say, because I can tell you this story about Kaiser Sose's family if you want to know that story. But I left it out.
Okay. So best film based on a true story. You gotta knock these out.
Okay.
So
Like,
go
seriously,
for it,
guys.
Warren.
Well, this is why people can watch them in pieces.
I think everybody has to go home though and go to sleep.
Okay, so based on a true story, I went with Ron Howard's Apollo 13.
Okay.
I think a ton of people have probably seen this. Everybody knows the story of Apollo 13, so I'm not going to go through it. Had a lot of good actors in it. It was nominated for 9 Oscars. It won 2. It didn't win Best Picture, but it was nominated for Best Picture. I think Braveheart won the year that it was nominated. It was very technically accurate in the movie. They did between 500 and 600 parabolic flights to get the zero gravity scenes. I think it took 13 days to film all that, because each flight gives you 23 seconds of zero gravity to film from. So imagine doing that 500 or 600 times for the film. So it was very well received as number 12 of most inspirational movies by AFI. And the film, I mean, it centers around the story. There's not a lot of sub-stories that are just kind of muddying the waters. It's about the mission. You see a little bit of, the families, and you're seeing mission control. You're not just seeing all on the ship, but it's mission control working with the ship and helping. And it's really gets into it and goes through this action of the mission and really just stays focused on that. Very accurate. And I'll finish up here quick. Another thing, it's rated PG. It's got a big appeal to audiences, and I mean it's a good, clean movie that anybody can watch, and you don't have to worry about it. And it's space exploration, while it's not what it was back when the love for space exploration and NASA is different now than it was. But I mean, the Apollo 13 mission was a big event for the country, a big moment for the country, and it's great to see it. And Ron Howard, I think, did very good justice. And Ron Howard's film career has kind of been up and down. He's had some really good things and some things, and so I think this is just one of his really good things. So
Okay.
I'll make it quick.
Nikki.
All right. The movie I chose was Secretariat. It's a Disney movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And what it is it's a true story about the racehorse Secretariat and about how its owner, how she got him through a coin toss. They had something where they bred 2 different mares to a stallion, and they did a coin toss to see who would get which horse. One was a boy, one was a girl. And so she lost the coin toss, and so she got him as a result of losing that coin toss. And it's just the story about how she had to think outside of the box, because when her father passed away, they owed a lot of back taxes on the ranch. And so what she did was she came up with, she was going to syndicate breeding rights for Secretariat. So she said, she guaranteed that he was going to win the Triple Crown. And once he won that, he was going to sell off all of his breeding rights. And so she was able to raise enough money to pay off all the back taxes for the farm. And so then she had to put her money where her mouth is, and the horse had to go on and win the Triple Crown. And it shows all the 3 Triple Crown races, which is the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. And the horse won all of those, and the records that the horse set are still valid today. Nobody has beat him. And when he won the Belmont, he won it with the most lead over all the other horses by 31 leads. And every time I watch it, I get goosebumps. I just love that movie. But I mean, it's factual. And Penny Chinnery is the lady that owns Secretariat. She was there every day of the filming. She had a cameo in the end of it, and all of the races, they matched them perfectly with the video of the other races. So it's very historically accurate, and just it's inspirational how she overcame everything to win. And she took such a gamble with this horse, saying that I'm going to guarantee it's going to win this, even though the Belmont is the longest race they have to win, and it had never run that far ever. And I'm just getting all psyched about this movie. But it is a great movie. It's very inspirational, and it's rated PG or PG-13. So I mean, it's a Disney movie. It's got the values. They quote scripture in it too.
Oh,
It's PG.
it's PG. It's PG.
I was going to say, because I even have it because they do it at the last race when the horse is so far ahead. They say this from Job, and I get chill bumps every time I hear it. but that
It's
is
a scripture play.
well, no, I mean,
No,
she's
that's fine.
because it's talking about
Okay.
horses,
Right.
and I wasn't gonna. But I mean, every time I hear it, and just the way they filmed it, because you're like they've got the camera attached to the jockey, and so it's a great
All right.
movie.
All right.
Moving on.
She's getting
Sarah.
excited. It's okay. Okay. Well, mine is not rated PG. Mine is rated R, I believe. Aaron Brockovich is what I went with. Starring Julia Roberts. Who doesn't love Julia Roberts? And it came out in 2000 with Steven Soderbergh as the director. Very, very good name director there. Basically, I think most everybody knows this movie, but Aaron Brockovich is about a real woman named Aaron Brockovich who was a single mother, unemployed, just kind of down on her luck woman with 3 children, and just had this car accident, and she had to hire a lawyer, and she ended up not winning the case, and the lawyer's like, all right, goodbye, whatever. But she basically needs money. She doesn't, she needs to survive, and so she basically kind of talks her way into a job with this lawyer, almost just like showing up and starting to work, and he's like, what are you doing here? She's like, you need to hire me. And so anyway, it's the story, that's just kind of setting up the story, but the story itself is about this woman, Aaron Brockovich, who has no background in law, and she basically takes this huge case that nobody was looking at. They didn't even know it was a case against PG&E Electric Company. I forgot the exact name. Oh, Pacific Gas and Electric Company.
PG&E.
PG&E, thank you. And basically they were putting this bad chromium, thank you, into the water that was making people ill in this one county in California. So he's just helping me with details. So basically, this film, it's kind of like a David and Goliath type, story, which I realize, people can say, well, that's been told a million times. But I think the fact that it is, kind of a story that could have been told before, that the fact that it was as successful as it was. I know Julia Roberts won Best Actress for it. I don't know 100% if this movie was up for any nominations. I didn't do the best of homework with that, but it was well known. And basically, this story, they took basically a nobody. Nobody's ever heard of Aaron Brockovich before this movie, and they made her to more of a household name. If you say Aaron Brockovich, you know who she is somewhat. You may not know the details, but you know it. And then another reason why I feel like it's a really good film is just how well Julia Roberts played this character, and this is all. I mean, this character is the movie. I mean, yes, it's about the story of the lawyers and the investigation, but she makes the movie as well. And it's interesting too, because her character, she's not one that you would just love off the bat. You know, she kind of is rude. She'll yell at people. She kind of tells it like it is. She dresses provocatively. You know, she doesn't make the best choices, it seems like, in life. But yet Julia Roberts portrays her just kind of in a real human way, and you're rooting for her. You want to see her succeed, and she is succeeding with the big guys, with the big lawyers, and she is not giving up, those types of things. So I think that those are the main reasons why I think it's the best. And it's a movie I can watch over and over again, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's just a very kind of stand the test of time film.
Yeah. Stand the test of time.
Yes, that's
Sarah's go-to.
That's my go-to.
Okay. I'll try to be quick. Secretariat. It's about a horse. While it's not inspirational to see a horse succeed in racing, you know, I think that there's more of a draw to see something like these astronauts succeed in getting back to Earth.
A horse.
I think Apollo 13 is another movie, just like Sarah said about Aaron Brockovich, that you can watch over and over again. Aaron Brockovich, a lot of people came out that are portrayed in the movie and said that it's not quite how things went down. And then also we get to hear the good part of the story, and the film stops off. We don't hear the rest of the story about what happened after they won that case and the problems they had with the lawyers and Aaron and getting their money and all this stuff. So we just get to see the triumph. Plus, Sarah kind of hit on it. She's not a very likable character in the movie. So the one guy that's like
But
watching
you like her. I'm serious.
The one guy that I really like, she drives away, and it's this. I mean, he's probably not really. I don't know how accurate it was, but he's this really nice motorcycle guy that's like watching her kids while she's working and stuff, and he likes her. Aaron Eckhart's character in it. I don't remember his name.
George.
But her care for this job over him, and he's, you know, likes her. I mean, they're like dating, and he's taking care of the kids while she's working.
Because it's a true life story.
She drives him away. Yeah, well, she's been divorced twice already before that. So we start to see some things. Plus, I think she was recently arrested for drunk driving a boat. So, and again with Secretariat, I mean, it's the classic, you know, overcoming the obstacles, the odd man out, winning everything type race, but it's still a horse. And then at the end of the day, I mean, there's only so much passion I can get for a horse. You know, they're all based on true stories. Apollo 13 was, but this is, I think they talk about it being NASA's like finest hour. I mean, to see everybody back home, the people that care about them, just rooting for them, to see NASA working together, and these guys working on the ship together while I was sick to get back home. I think it's more intriguing. It's more inspirational than seeing a horse set some records, personally.
Yeah. To me, I look at Secretariat like any sports movie, like Remember the Titans or anything. And I mean, they're athletes. They train them for it. I mean, Secretariat was one of the best athletes of the 20th century. Like, people voted on it and agreed that he was one of the best athletes of the 20th century.
That's a fact.
Okay.
I can tell you.
I'm saying it.
No, that's fine.
So, I mean, to me,
like you said,
people make these
there's a ton
movies
of
because
athletes
they
stories.
want to see them. People keep making these movies because people want to get the inspiration. They like seeing people overcome obstacles. Apollo 13 is a good movie, but, I mean, it was done in, how long ago? 95? Is that
95, yeah.
Okay. I mean, where is it now? Like, people don't...
I think people still like the movie.
I mean, I'm not saying they don't like it, but it's not something that stood the test of time where people still talk about.
Like Aaron Brockovich.
I was going to say, I'm arguing with that too, because
Who's talking about Secretariat?
me. I am, and that's
Like you said, the athlete movie's been done a ton of times.
And people still pay money to go see them because they want that inspiration. So this is a different take on the athlete because it is a horse. And
saying-
you may not be interested in it.
Right, but by saying that, there's nothing new you're going to get out of this that you haven't seen in other athlete movies.
Well, all I have to do is read a textbook and I can find out about Apollo 13. Why do I have to see the movie? I mean, if you're just saying this is the same
Because
thing.
the movie keeps you engaged, even though you know what's going on in the movie. You know they make it back to Earth, but you're still like.
Well, it's the same
intense
thing with
watching the movie.
Secretariat.
If
In
you
my
play Secretariat.
because this is based on my opinion. To me,
Yeah.
I could watch this every single day and not get tired of it, even though I know what happens. But it's just because this is what I like.
Mhm.
And Erin Brockovich, to me, I didn't really like her in the movie, so I had a hard time watching the movie
Mhm.
because I was like, I don't really like her, so I really don't care what happens to her. I really didn't care that much, and so to me, it wasn't as good of a story. I mean, Apollo 13, yeah, it's old, it's been done, but I mean, at least they weren't awful like she was.
Aaron,
Can I argue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Time
I
Go
love
with your
it.
point.
I know. Okay, so I think they kind of made my point a little bit that, okay, yeah, she wasn't the best character. Yeah, she drove a man away. But the fact that we're still talking about the movie and that it won awards and is really
You're
good.
talking about the movie.
Like, well, I mean, I think everybody was at the time. I mean, I really think it had a presence at the Oscars. So everybody can disagree or have their own opinions, but it was a very big film back in 2000 for sure. Also, the thing about the boyfriend that I loved is that, yes, you are right that she kind of drove him away, and you see this not so, good side of her, which to me just makes it more like real life. If you have a character that's easy to like, then, that just does everything great. That's easy. But you have to portray a character that's more like a real person that has a ton of flaws and struggles with a lot of different things. But at the very end, when she's going to tell one of these mothers who's about to get a settlement how much she's going to get, she brings her ex-boyfriend along with her. So they're not dating anymore, but she brings them, and he's like, why do you want me to come? She's like, I just want you to see what you helped out with. And she goes, and she tells him, and this woman is just overjoyed and crying. They hug, and you see this the ex-boyfriend's character, he just kind of smiles a little bit. Not that it made everything all right, but she cares. She wanted to show him, like, you helped with this. She acknowledged that without him, she couldn't have done all of this. And so I just think that was a true character to the movie as well.
Okay.
I won't say anything else. There's things I can say, but I know we gotta move on. So,
Yeah.
make your
Alright.
pick. So
All right. Goodness. All right. Okay.
Just pick.
You can do it, Zach.
Just go.
I'm going for Secretariat. I'm sorry.
Oh, Nikki.
I'm gonna say it because I've seen. Well, okay, I can't say that now. Because
What?
I've
Are we
seen
still
I've seen
thinking?
Apollo 13. I've seen Secretariat, and I feel just Secretariat had a little bit more connection with going from you're relying everything on this horse to do its job and win, and I think that is that unpredictable factor when there's almost for Apollo 13 there's almost too many characters and it was hard to follow for me. It was really
all right, you better just quit talking.
Yeah.
Hard to follow Apollo 13.
Congratulations.
well, hard to
Okay,
connect.
that's
Anyway, all right.
Okay.
All right, number 6. What is the funniest line in film?
Who's going? Nikki goes first, right? Okay.
Okay, the funniest line in film I did Doug from Up. What the dog?
Oh, a line that he did?
Yes.
Okay.
When he has this little collar and he's like, my master made me this collar. He's a good and smart master. He made me this collar so I can talk squirrel. That is my favorite line. Every time I see that, I start laughing because it's like it's like that's probably what a dog really sounds like in their mind, and they just brought it to life in a cartoon. And every time I hear that, I just start laughing.
What about Ruh-roh? Sorry.
Yeah, but to me, it's funny enough where I'll be talking and I'll get distracted. Somebody will be like squirrel. And so it was so funny that it's become a catchphrase for when I get distracted and I Squirrel. So yeah, that's the funniest line to me.
Okay. Sarah.
Okay, so I went with a line from the classic movie Dumb and Dumber, the first one, because I refuse to see the second one.
Or the third one.
I guess I meant the most recent one. Yeah. Anyway, the Jim Carrey's character, which is Lloyd, he's talking to Harry, the other guy's character, and he's basically really upset, kind of not happy with where their life is right now. And the line, he's kind of trying to tell his friend, like, we just need to get out of here, And the line that I chose was, "We got no food, we got no jobs, our pets' heads are falling off." Because their pet's head literally fell off, their bird. So, I mean, it's hilarious.
Okay.
It's hilarious because number one, it's true. So, and you never would expect that to be true, which is why that's funny. And then also at the same time, like he's trying to convince his friend that we need to get out of here and start over. And you wouldn't expect somebody to say our pets' heads are falling off. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go with we have no food and we got no jobs. You would think we have no girlfriends, or you think it'd be something else. But he goes with this crazy line. Because also, like I said, it happened. So, makes me laugh.
Warren?
Okay, I went with a line from Airplane, the classic 1980s movie.
You didn't. One of the ones I chose.
When they say, "Shirley, you can't be serious," and Leslie Nielsen's response is, "I am," and don't call me Shirley. So I picked this line because it's a classic line. A lot of people know this line even now. It's 75th movie quote on the AFI list of top movie quotes. Not just funny quotes, but movie quotes in general. This was also the first comedic role Leslie Nielsen ever had. And so this showed a whole different side of him. He was playing the romantic lead in movies before that, which is hard to believe for somebody like me because all I remember him is from Airplane and like the Naked Gun movies and everything that followed. This Airplane, there's a ton of good lines in movies. In the movie Airplane, there's a ton of funny lines in a ton of movies, so this was really hard. But I went with Airplane, and I picked this particular line because it's so recognizable. They used this line in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. I don't know. There's a scene in there. I don't know if you ever noticed that they say that as well as homage to Airplane. But just if you look at what the type of films and what Airplane started, the success of Airplane, and David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrams and the films that followed with the Naked Guns and all these spoofs and stuff where they're doing this ridiculous stuff, but they're being serious throughout this. It was a parody of the movie 0 Hour. So it's just a super funny movie. It did $83 million when it was released in 1980. That's how successful this movie was. And there's been so many things, so many people that have been influenced by this movie. The guys that did Dumb and Dumber, the Farrelly brothers, got their big writing break from the guys that did this movie. John Landis' career, he doesn't have much one now, but obviously, but his career was kind of launched from these guys. Saturday Night Live was inspired by these guys. So I mean, this film as a whole had a great impact on just comedy in general. It started Leslie Nielsen's career in comedy, which we all seen how that went. And this line is the most memorable, or one of the most memorable, if not the most memorable line from that film. And it's one Leslie Nielsen said in that with a complete straight face during the whole time. So that's why I went with this.
Okay. Nikki.
Okay. I think for Dumb and Dumber, there's a lot more quotes that stand out as funny. That if you ask me to think of a funny quote, that would probably be like pretty bird with their pet and the bird. That's more memorable to me than our pets' heads are falling off, or even when they're on the moped and he's like, you go do something and completely redeem yourself when he sells the van and gets the moped instead. I mean, to me, it's funny, but it's not necessarily one that sticks out in the movie as the funniest of the movie. For Airplane, there's a lot of play on words, like with the co-pilot and the navigator, over, under, and all of those. So, I mean, there's a lot of memorable stuff. And, I mean, you could have probably picked anything from Airplane, just if you were going for the airplane. You're going for the movie because of the movie. And so some of those lines are kind of interchangeable. Like some of the funny lines from that movie you can look up a bunch of funny lines, and I mean, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna pick one, and that was the one you happened to pick. So, I mean, to me, I don't know if I feel like it was the funniest or it's the one that, oh, it's an airplane quote. Let me just pick this one because people will recognize it, whether it's funny or just recognizable. But
Okay. Sure.
I kind of to say what Nikki just said. I think yeah, Airplane is, you know, has a lot of accolades for a comedy movie and everything, but I think that when you think of a funny line, you don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be from the funniest movie of all time. You know what I mean? I think it can just be from any movie. I mean, Nikki picked one that's not even necessarily from a comedy you would think of, if that makes sense. Like, not that there's not comedic moments, but Up's not like a comedy type movie. So, and there's funny lines in it. So I think, you know, just to kind of go against Warren's is he might have the best funny movie, you know, but is it the funniest line? And I think, and then to kind of what Nikki said about this not being the funniest line of Dumb and Dumber, I mean, I think obviously this whole thing is super subjective. The whole movie fights is, but I feel like this one particularly is super subjective because something that makes me laugh may not make anybody else laugh. And I think, again, just you see that, you know, this bird's head, this, you know, it doesn't have a head. Like, they literally have pets' heads that are falling off. I mean, just that in itself is funny. So it's just crazy. So I think that's just an unexpected line. And oh yeah, that's why. So there you go. It's just hilarious. And I think it's also delivery of Jim Carrey. Everybody knows Jim Carrey, and he's, you know, he's pretty funny. So I don't really have anything to go against Nikki, but it's a cartoon, so there. I don't know. I don't have anything. I know.
Okay. So Dumb and Dumber. I'm with Nikki. I don't think that's the funniest line from the movie. I mean, when she's like, "Oh, so 1 in 1,000," she's like, more like 1 in 1,000,000. So you're telling me there's a chance. That line, oh, Samsonite, we were way off. You know, when he's trying to figure out her name, they look.
Samsonite.
Yeah. So there's a lot of I think there's better lines from that movie than that particular one. And their heads weren't just falling off. The guy that's looking for them ripped the head off.
I forgot that part.
They
But it makes it even funnier.
Yeah,
Or
so-
duct tape, didn't it?
It was Scotch.
So, as far as Nikki's movie, I think Squirrel is repeated several times throughout that movie, correct?
But this is the first time that it's brought up when Doug meets.
Right, I know, but it's just an ongoing gag throughout the movie. I think at least our lines, you know, are kind of standalone. It's not like they're saying "Don't call me Shirley" 4 or 5 times in the movie. They only say it once. So Nikki's is more kind of an ongoing gag. It's not just a funny line to me. It's kind of a gag. It's the dog's gag in the movie. It's why the dog's cute and why it's funny. But it's not just a one-liner that it zinged out and we never hear it again in the movie. He does it on and on in the movie. And yeah, Airplane is an important movie in film, and Sarah's saying that I'm just picking one of the funniest movies, and yeah, I think that's part of it because we can all go through a ton of lines that we think just really funny. So I did go for something that is not just a funny line, but it's also got significance beyond just being a funny line in the film, because Sarah and I, when we were looking for this question, there was all kinds of lines we were reading from all kinds of films, and we were laughing just thinking about these lines. There's a ton of funny lines out there. So yeah, I picked this line because it is funny. It is one of the most memorable lines from Airplane. And not only that, this was Leslie Nielsen's first comedic part, and it's not like he went on to do like one movie as a comedy. Most people, probably especially our age, that's all we know Leslie Nielsen as, is a comedic actor. And this movie started it, and it's how he delivered lines. And this was his most famous line out of Airplane. So that's why I went with this one.
Okay. All right.
Does Nikki get to go again, or are we done?
Alrighty.
Okay, that's right. I couldn't remember.
We
Yeah.
need to move on anyway.
Okay, yeah,
it's
we
getting
need to-
late.
Okay. So, if we are going off of stuff that has stood the test of time, I'm going to give it to Warren because I had never even seen that film, yet I knew it was a Nelson quote, and I knew about the at least I knew the line like perfectly, and for it to be in my generation when it was like definitely a movie that wasn't part of my generation, I think that's something very memorable, very awesome. I just recently saw it, and then I was like, That's where that came from. So, but yeah. So I'm gonna give one the point there. All right. So last question: best unscripted moment in film. Sarah.
Okay, I went with the movie Pretty Woman when Richard Gere and Julie Roberts, their characters, they're about to go to the opera, really fancy. Pretty Woman in itself, the storyline is Julie Roberts plays a prostitute actually, and Richard Gere basically pays to have her for like a whole week, and kind of they end up falling in love. And she obviously doesn't come from a very good background. She doesn't know a whole lot of like nice things, and he really treats her well and those types of things. So I'm not going to go into all of the movie because you don't need to know the movie actually for the moment, but it's a classic scene where they're dressed up. She comes out in a beautiful red dress. It's like an iconic dress, I think, for that film. And he has this beautiful big box that has this beautiful necklace in it, and he opens it for her, and she's looking at it, and she goes to touch it, and he like does a little snap on it, like, and she just has this huge laugh, and it's a real Julia Roberts laugh. It wasn't like a character laugh. It was actually her laughing. And that whole scene, was not scripted. It wasn't even like they're just trying to film and see what we can do type thing. It was actually a gag that the director wanted Richard Gere to do on Julia Roberts. What happened is back when this was filmed, Julia Roberts wasn't really popular back then as an actress yet. She was young. This is one of her bigger movies, first bigger movies. And so she, in an interview, the director was saying that she actually would go out a lot at night and kind of party and stay up late. So she'd be tired on set the next morning. And so he wanted to kind of wake her up and kind of get the energy going. So he told Richard Gere, he's like, hey, I need you to kind of get her energy going, like do something to kind of, wake her up. And so they weren't even going to put it in the film, but because of what it did and how much it showed just like a great reaction between the two of them, they put it in there. And I would argue that it's one of the most memorable scenes of that movie. If you think there's different scenes of that movie that are popular that people remember, but that one I feel like is the one. And the fact that it was supposed to be a practical joke, never make it, makes it even better.
Okay.
Okay, I went with one of our favorite characters in film, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I picked the scene. I'm not going to give the synopsis of the movie, but the scene, they're in the market, like in Cairo, fighting, and I guess people are trying to kidnap Marion, and he's fighting people, and this guy comes up with a sword. He's like this black swordsman, or he's not black, he's wearing like all black, big guy swordsman and stuff, and he starts twirling his sword and doing all this, and Indiana Jones, he's been fighting people, and you think he's gonna fight this guy, and he just pulls out his gun and shoots him. And it's very funny when it happens. And the reason they did that, the original scene, he was supposed to get into this long, drawn-out fight with this guy. It was going to take like 3 days of shooting. The swordsman been preparing for weeks for this scene. And the night before they do it, Harrison Ford got dysentery, and he's so sick, he didn't have the energy to do it. So he's like, hey, what if I just pull out my gun and shoot him? And it became one of the most famous scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not only that, in the second film, Temple of Doom, there's kind of a throwback to that scene, and the kind of the opening fight scene in the club where some guys are going at him and stuff, and he thinks he has his gun, and he's going to do that again, and he realizes he doesn't have his gun at that point, so he actually has to fight him. But fans of the movie, instantly pick up on that. And then also, if you go to the Indiana Jones stunt show in Hollywood Studios, they recreate this scene, and it's just kind of a general stunt show for Indiana Jones. Doesn't follow all the movies true and true. It does. There's different scenes that it ties in with throughout the movie, but it's not like it follows Raiders of the Lost Ark from beginning to end in that movie. But this particular scene, they recreate in the Indiana Jones stunt show at Hollywood Studios, or I think that's what it's called now, in Disney World, when you go see it. So, it was basically Harrison Ford got the runs, and he couldn't film anymore, and so he just shoots the guy, and it became one of the most memorable scenes out of Indiana Jones.
Okay, and what I did was the scene from Jaws when they're on the boat. They know the shark's been killing people, and so they've got Chief Brody. He's going chum into the water, and all of a sudden you see Jaws for the first time pop up out of the water, and he backs up and says to the captain, "We're going to need a bigger boat." that whole scene, the line wasn't scripted or anything, and I think everybody's heard that. We're gonna need a bigger boat. You may not know what it's from, but it's one of the most popular, or one of the most recognizable movie quotes, and the people voted on it, like number 25. But the fact that he was just like, the look on his face, it all just combines, and it's just this perfect moment. It's so funny because he's just like, we're gonna need a bigger boat, and you finally get the first view of Jaws, and so it's like this one scene that's pretty important to the movie, and it was just, he made it up on the spur of the moment when he's just like, hey, I'm gonna say this, and it stuck because everybody's heard that before. We're gonna need a bigger boat.
Sure. All right, Sarah.
Well, I think on Nikki's, it's definitely a famous scene and famous line, but I think that whatever they were filming at that time was probably going to be in the movie no matter what. I think the line, I could be wrong on this, but the line itself was probably not scripted, and he maybe wouldn't have said anything or whatever, but it wasn't, the whole moment wasn't all unscripted, because at some point we're going to have to see Jaws, so I'm guessing they scripted some moment where they're going to see Jaws, and I'm guessing it would probably be near, a boat or something like that, but so I don't know that would be the best unscripted moment. Is that what the question was? I just want to make sure I'm not saying it wrong. So that way, I think that's more of an unscripted line, and definitely a good one for that matter, but not a moment. I think how mine stands out against Warren's would be that, again, from what I learned on a interview with the director, is that this wasn't even supposed to be part of the film at all, whereas Warren's, there was going to be a sword fight. I mean, of some sort. Granted, he wasn't going to shoot him, and the reason why is, a great, unique story, because, what's the guy's name? Harrison Ford got the runs or whatever. Give you that. But they were going to still do something. There was going to be some sort of fight scene in there. And so, but just because of that, he ended up shooting it and making it a better for the film. But I think mine is best because completely, like, it was actually it was going to be on the cutting floor. It wasn't meant to ever be in the movie. Last minute, they decided to do it, and then it actually becomes an iconic part of that movie. It would be different if that scene, you don't really ever remember it. But if you remember Pretty Woman, you remember that scene. And like I said, it's a breakout role for Julia Roberts. I think it's one of the first times we see kind of her famous laugh. She kind of has a laugh. I'm serious. She has a noticeable laugh.
She does have a laugh.
Whether you like it or not, she kind of does. And that's where you first really see it. It's her. And I think you just kind of see her true beauty on screen. And it's just a cool little connection between the two main characters who are becoming a love interest in the movie. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I was going to say the same thing Sarah did about Nikki's line. The film and the scene was getting filmed no matter what. I think that was the first reveal of Jaws in the film when it comes out. That was happening no matter what. It was the line that was unscripted. So it falls into the category of the question you asked, but to me, it didn't change the scene. It didn't change the big reveal of the shark. It just added a funny little quip at the end of a scene that was already getting filmed. So to me, it's not. It doesn't make it as good as completely changing up the entire scene of what's going to get shot. So that's. I would just say they just added a line to something that was already happening anyway. With Sarah's, I think one of the difference between mine's and hers was kind of a practical joke that made it into the film. Mine was more. It was done out of necessity. But they had to do it because Harrison Ford was sick. He wasn't going to be able to do 3 days of action for this one scene. But not only that, it was one of those less is more added to the movie. And now you can't imagine them doing this really big, long, drawn-out fight scene. You couldn't imagine it without that scene. When really that was split second, just it happened real quick and then it's over. There's not even, he doesn't even get close to the guy. He just shoots him from a distance. So it was way less, but it really added more, and it added more. I think to Indiana Jones' character, you see more of what he's like, And if you watch the Indiana Jones films, there's humors in them. He's witty. He's a very likable type character, and I think that scene and just that kind of split second, like, why am I going to fight you? I've got a gun, just shoot you. Because you see scenes like that in movies, it's like, why are they doing this? Why don't they just shoot the guy? Why do they got to throw down fisticuffs? So I just think it added to the movie, and it was one of those where they had to do it. It wasn't like a practical joke like this was, and Julia Roberts does have her laugh. It is a little obnoxious, and it's that particular scene is memorable, but it's also gotten made fun a lot too, just from her when she closes the box on her and stuff. So
It's still iconic, to use one of your words. Is iconic one of your words?
I've tried to say it less in this movie fight. It's iconic. I said it a lot in the last movie fight. I tried to say it less. Although Indiana Jones, iconic character in film. So
All right. I think for Indiana Jones, it's an unscripted moment, but if you haven't seen the movie, you have no way of even. That scene isn't like a memorable scene where they show it over and over again. If you haven't seen the movie, you won't even see that scene. It's not like, or if you happen to go to the Stunt Spectacular at Disney World. I mean, it's not like a famous scene that everybody recognizes. So to me, yes, it was unscripted and it was a good moment, but you have to be watching it to notice, to see that moment. And I mean, most people are like, oh, well, that's just how they shot it. I mean, we know it's unscripted because we are Indiana Jones fans, and so we know this. But I mean, normally somebody's just like, oh, they just wrote that. That's just what it was in the movie. And so, I mean, it doesn't.
that's the beauty of a lot of unscripted scenes, though. They
Yeah.
blend in with the movie.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I just don't know if it's got the visibility of even the scene, whether it's for people to see it, to appreciate whether it's scripted or not. Pretty Woman, when he shuts the thing on her finger, it's like, yeah, she laughs, but it was another moment. There was a bunch of cute moments in that movie. And I mean, it's unscripted moment. Jaws, it was a line in this scene, but I mean, it was still not planned. It wasn't a planned line, so it's not like this is what they were going into expecting this scene to be. And because he added this, it took on a whole nother aspect to the scene because of the unscripted line he added.
Okay. All right. So the biggest, going right with yours, I think I do agree. Like it was, yeah. I think because I didn't even know that was really unscripted, because whenever Julia Roberts or whatever laughs, she always does that high pitched, obnoxious. I'm like, oh goodness, what's going on? If you got it, I don't really like Julia Roberts, but I'm trying to stay and throw that away in the debate.
Wish I would have known that going into the
Julia Roberts.
So yeah, I think I mean it did a thing where like it wasn't really known that it was unscripted, and I think I do agree with you that that's a beauty in these moments, that is like it fits. If it's unscripted moment, it should fit well with the movie, and people should not be able to tell that it's unscripted. And I think that's good. And so when you were making the argument about how, you know, his moment, you wouldn't be able to see it, like it would just be like, oh, it's scripted just like the normal thing. I think that's what makes it stronger, not necessarily what hinders it. Because if we go on that point, then, you know, we should get a bigger boat. I mean, that I kind of see as, you know, something that could be in Jaws as well, because, I mean, it's a thriller, but, you know, they want to keep people not be like, this is like this is terrifying beyond relief. They want to put some comic relief in there. So I'm going to.
Yeah, who are you going with?
I know.
I'm going everywhere.
You're all over the
Going
place.
all the way.
Yes.
I gotta give it to Warren.
Aww.
You sound so like sad when
I
you
know.
say that.
Because I like that. I like all of your points. That's.
Warren won.
Yep.
Congratulations,
Okay,
sir.
Thank you.
All right.
I gotta say, I was so nervous going into this movie. I told Sarah more than once today. I'm like, this is the most nervous I've ever been going into a movie fight. Going up against
I was
Nikki.
about to
There's a
say,
lot of
and
answers. There's a
I
lot
was
of
surprised how our movies were like parallel in a lot of the ones we chose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
He's got to do a closing.
Okay. You do your closing now.
Okay. So if you've watched the whole entire way through, kudos to you. You are awesome. If you haven't, then just note, we really would love people, to put on the comments, just asking, hey, I want you to do this question next time, or just like do anything like that, or even come up to me at work and just tell me. But thanks for tuning in. Next time, I believe Warren will be judging, and I'll be participant. So
Yeah.
watch out for whoever.
Yeah, I can hit on that real quick. So yeah, I'll be taking over as judge for a while. I won't be participating in any of the fights anymore, which I'm sure some people are glad. But we're gonna set up a bracket system going. We're gonna have a contest. I'm gonna get a pretty decent sized prize to put at the end of it. And hopefully motivate some people that are kind of on the fence about participating to participate. And I'll be posting stuff up at work in the next week or so about that. So it'll be fun. And I know there's already people that have expressed interest, and so we'll make sure that you guys get a chance.
Yeah.
And people that have done it once and want to go again, we'll get them in too.
Yeah.
So.
And you don't even have to really be necessarily a movie buff. If you're, good at debating people and you're good at putting your point out there, then, that's all that you really need. I think the most successful people are the people that can turn down other people's answers more so than, person. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. All right. But anyway, thanks for tuning in.